All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another virtual astrology club. This time, the forecast will be for the month of October 2023. Hello, I am Claire Moon, and welcome to another month. Hopefully, September was okay. Before we jump into October, we are going to talk a little bit about September just because we do have one event that's coming up, the next full moon. So we're going to do a little bit before. This is going to be probably a good 2 hours. Feel free to come and go as you please. There's a live chat over to this side of your screen. If you have any questions, any comments, anything relevant you'd like to share, please do so. Hopefully there'll be other people in there to say hello as well. I am okay at keeping up with the chat during these. I'm much better during the once monthly Q&A that I have. So if I miss you, I'm sorry. I'm going to do my best to keep up with it. If you do have I guess, if it really is like a happen in chat and you do have like a question, maybe put in caps lock question so that I see it, because I don't want to miss that if that's the case. Okay. Well, before I bring up the chart, is there anything I need to say? Any announcements? I don't think so. Let's just jump into it. So here is the sky right now at this very moment. I'm going to just, we just entered Taurus. How nice. Because if you know anything, you know that Jupiter is in Taurus and we like that. So we like to see that. Let's see who's popping into the chat at this beautiful Taurus rising moment. Hello, Max. Hello, Breezy. Hello, Lee. Hello, Zach. Seeing some familiar faces is always nice. Max Gascon Astrologer is my astrologer sometimes. So if you need an astrologer, I do readings. Of course, Max also does readings. Check them out. I'll probably link them below. I'm going to add links after this too. I did add the dates of interest below. You can scroll down to find those. I'm going to say those in a minute. I also have links to my newsletter sign up. If you want to book an appointment, I have a link for that as well. I will put timestamps up after this. It does take me a couple days to get those in. And if I do reference anything today, which I have a couple links I'm probably going to put down there, I will do so after. So watch out for those. And if you're joining us later, if you don't make the live, feel free to comment, share anything you want. I do try to keep up with the comments as well. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. Smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. I do believe if you are on a phone right now, the subscribe button is not very obvious. So look at the bottom right-hand corner and there's a little pop-up thingy you can hover over and that'll let you subscribe. Am I not even subscribed to my own channel? I don't know if you can do that. That's funny. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so let me look at my notes. What do we got going on here? I'm going to rattle off the dates of interest first. So big dates for the month of October. We've got on the 4th, Mercury entering Libra. On the 8th, Venus entering Virgo. Mars entering Scorpio on the 11th. We have 2 eclipses this month and 2 void of course moons, which I will explain later. The first one. So first void of course moon from the 11th to the 14th. So, just right now already, this is what you want to write on your calendar. Just chill between the 11th and the 14th. Things that we try to start between these void of course moon dates, no bueno. So just don't. And then we've got on the 14th, our first eclipse, the solar eclipse, it's a new moon in Libra. On the 20th, Mercury Cazimi. On the 22nd, Mercury's entering into Scorpio. On the 23rd, Sun enters into Scorpio. There are so many ingresses. Why are there so many? And then we get our second round now, round 2, void of course moon, 25th through the 28th. Sit your buns down, do a puzzle. Then on the 28th, we have our second eclipse, and that is our full moon in Taurus. So that's the month. It's a busy month. I think if I just stuck to these dates alone, we would be here for over an hour. But I have more than that. So we'll get into the deets. I guess before we get into the details, let's do some wider picture stuff. And I guess the first of wider picture stuff would be, if you're watching this in October, this will be the past. But we're having an Aries full moon here very shortly, and that's going to be on the 29th. So as I record this now, it's the 27th of September. In 2 days, we're going to have a full moon in Aries. And this one isn't close enough for it to be an eclipse. We need to be within 13 degrees of a node, a lunar node. So, by the time the moon is at 6 here, which I guess for visual purposes, I will just go right back there. So like the moon here, we've got that at 6 degrees. We got the sun at 6 degrees. So that's where that full moon is going to happen on the 29th of September. And at this point, we're still further than 13 degrees away from the nodes. So essentially, the moon and the sun are still too far away from each other by latitude to block each other out. So next month, so right now the moon and the sun are kind of skirting past, by how tall they are in the sky, tall, declination, latitude. Next month, they will be able to at least partially get in each other's way. So that's why this month it doesn't count as an eclipse. That being said, I'm a little curious being, this is a lunation or part of a lunation cycle that's going to be in Aries and Libra. I do wonder if it's going to give us a little bit of a preview, or if it will just echo, something in terms of like what topics of life are described by the Libra and Aries parts of your chart. Let's start watching it right now and then try to extrapolate for next month. Not in like a fear mongering, like, oh no, what should I be scared about kind of way, but just in a very like neutral, observing, like, yeah, what topics seem to be loud right now for me? And maybe these will be the same topics that will also be present for the eclipses next month, particularly the one on the 14th that we're having in Libra. So I just wanted to point that out to try to kind of connect what's going on right now with a little bit later, because I think there might be between September and October, because of course the planets don't know that we have a Gregorian calendar for time that we use. So it doesn't always work out smoothly that way with astrology. Okay. I think that's all I have to say. I'm not going to get into the symbolism too much of this full moon. I did that last month. So check out the end of the forecast for September. Again, I guess, maybe I'll say too, the best way to use these forecasts, because they are a little longer, and we end up, even for myself, it ends up being a lot of information as I'm reading it. Kind of like if you're reading like a whole article or a book, you're not going to remember every single thing about it when you get to the end of it. So, I think these forecasts in longer format, it's good to revisit throughout the month. And I do that myself. I re-listen to this. I re-listen to it to make sure I didn't say mistakes. But even as I'm re-listening to it, when I'm looking for my mistakes, I'm always like, oh yeah, like I'm like putting things together that I didn't. And if I'm re-listening later in the month to try to remind myself of like what I even said, it is helpful, because, time is very dense and there's a lot that happens. So it's good to check in from time to time. Okay, let's go to the 1st of October. Before I do, let me just see if there's any comments or questions. Adam has joined us. Thank you for joining us on your lunch break. That's very nice. When I was still having lunch breaks, I refused to talk to anyone and I would run away from everybody. So thank you. It's very nice of you to include me. All right, great. And one thing I learned today too, is you can actually pop out the chat. Like if you are I'm on my laptop, and it lets you like make the chat into a whole nother little window. So I think that's going to help me keep an eye on things too. Okay, so general thoughts for the month, I guess. Yeah, before we get into day by day. So Mars is going to be really strong this month. Mars is going to be in Scorpio. That starts on the 12th. So after the 12th, at least, I think it'll be good in the month of October to focus on Mars things. So what are you doing that takes action? What are you putting effort toward, particularly in the Scorpio part of your chart? That is going to be where we can be really effective, and I think have more kind of locus power of control over our own locus, right? Over our own little area of life, wherever Scorpio is for you, whatever those house topics talk about. So for me, it's in my 10th. It's about my career. So those are going to be things to kind of focus on for the month of October after the 12th. Venus is not going to be as strong. So they're going to be in Virgo. So if we're trying to do Venus things this month, not to say we can't be super successful. If I remember correctly, I believe Martha Stewart has Venus in Virgo, and we know how artistically gifted Martha Stewart is. But if we're looking for just really easeful pleasure, easeful yum-yums, Virgo doesn't do that as easily. So, this isn't a month to just like kick back and be super lackadaisical and just hope that things feel good. That's not the thing. So I personally am not going to be focusing on Venus in that classic Venusian way, and just expecting things to feel great in that way. And that, again, that's more in the Virgo part of our charts, but just saying. So I always like to do that, when I'm looking at the sky at any given time and I'm trying to see, okay, where can I most efficiently use my time, my effort, my energy, my whatevers. I'm looking for the planets that are in good shape. So even right now, at this very moment, Mercury is still in Virgo. So I should theoretically be, like updating my financial books and, doing any kind of little nutsy boltsy forms and boring material life stuff. Like I'm going to be really good at that between now and the 4th when Mercury gets out of Virgo. Likewise, I'm not going to be expecting planets that are struggling in the sky at any given moment to be producing really consistent results for me or whatever, if we're thinking about it that way. So that's one thing that's broad. We talked about the Aries full moon. The other thing that's kind of broad, and then thinking about a planet and how well they are doing in the sky at any given moment. One thing I'd like to turn our attention to is Mercury, Sun, and Mars. And they are moving over the course of the end of September throughout October. They're both just getting closer and closer and closer to the sun, both Mercury and Mars. And the mathematical kind of convention that we always use is the within 15 degree rule for when a planet is theoretically under the beams of the sun and thus no longer visible in the sky. Although we know that in like real natural terms, it's more complicated and nuanced than that. But we can say, I think what we can say with certainty is that over the course of October, Mercury's significations are going to be changing, as are Mars, because they are being closer to the sun. Mars is going to be less affected by that. I'll explain why later. So that makes, okay, our planning, our actions, our efforting, like how we get shit done, basically, it gets quieter. It gets it's under the radar, behind the scenes. Like we're doing the little things that aren't really noticeable externally yet. So that's kind of the vibe. So if you are working on something and you're I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's coming into its complete form or being that's going to be on the other side, that feels actually correct for October. October is not stable for several reasons: eclipses, void of course moons, and our planets of planning, cognating, action, effort, basically our prefrontal cortex and our ability to do stuff. All of that, it's a bit acting, it's not this like straightforward, just, external obvious progress. It's a little bit more circuitous and unstable than that this month. So just let it be. I think that's kind of one of the main things for the month of October. We just had, September I was kind of suspecting, not to toot my own horn or say that I was right about a prediction, but just in a very large view, I was expecting September to be more of a regrouping month, especially after like a Venus retrograde, a Mercury retrograde. And now finally we're coming out of that. We've been coming out of that. And we've even been seeing like around us, like some strikes have been resolving. I think a lot of challenges that people have been having, like some of them have been resolving, and we've been able to do a little bit of catch up in the kind of like the 2-week chunk that we're in right now at the end of September. October is going to get a little funky again. In the first couple days of October, I did pick an election for somebody for like the first day or two of October, which is decent, but like after that, I did not feel comfortable making a ton of elections for anyone, that they were paying for at least. So, and that's one thing. Now, another overall thought with just the stability of October, which is interesting, is if we look at the qualities. So I have in the past talked a bit about the different balance of qualities that we have in the sky at any time. And when I say qualities, I mean, how many planets do we have in either diurnal versus nocturnal signs? How many planets do we have in earth, water versus air, fire? Because the balance and proportion and ratio of those kind of has this background effect, I think. And that comes from, I get this from Robert Hand, who I have mentioned and linked in the past and things with this. But this month was really interesting because we've got a lot of planets that end up in nocturnal, and everything ends up sextiling everything. So this was an interesting thing that I saw. It's once stuff gets out of Libra. Yeah, so ignoring the moon, that's weird, but I'm going to take the moon off. Wait. Just pretend like the moon's not there. And we've got, it's like, oops, all sextiles. So what in the heck does it mean then when we've got all of this stuff acting in harmonious aspects to each other? So this is by the end of October is when this starts to click in, once we get the sun out of a cardinal sign. This is the nocturnal signs are the more responsive, receptive ones. So they really respond to all the shit that's been happening. So I think like by the time we get to the end of October, it's going to be a time to respond, be receptive. And we may not be able to do much else if, there's no air, there's no fire. Those are the things that we need to kind of make an impact on the world around us. And I don't know how easy it's going to be to do that at the very end of the month. It seems like a better time to respond and receive and just be with whatever and try to make sense of it. And I think we will be able to. All of this is acting in harmony. These are all like angles and things that are of the nature of Jupiter and Venus. So they are stabilizing relationships. They bring stability, conditions for growth. Areas of life that are described by these places are working together in harmony. So whatever happens in October, like this is kind of where we land. And this makes me feel like okay about it for some reason. It makes me feel like we're going to be, I don't know. I shouldn't make that assumption because it's always so context dependent, but it feels a little bit more chill. And depending on your context, like if you need to be air and fire, then it might not be a good thing. So I think it really does depend on your context at the end of the month, like kind of however you're sitting at that point, we will kind of be more able to just respond and receive it versus kind of like trying to change it and impact it in a way that's super active. So hopefully that makes sense. But that was remarkable. This does not happen very often. I tracked this for the whole year of 2023 last fall and found this and was like, this is really interesting. And it's just for, of course, a couple weeks until in November, until someone gets, I guess it would be Venus. Venus breaks that up then. But that's not till November. So, and last wide lens thing, I will say too. So after the eclipses this month, we still have, the second eclipse is on the 20, whatever that was, the 28th. And then we still have 2 weeks until the next new moon. So in general with eclipse stuff, I like to kind of just scope out that whole 4-week lunation cycle before I make sense of all of it and hopefully have to move on from it. And that doesn't happen until the second week of November. So if everyone, if things are interesting in October and you're uncertain or you're unsure how to proceed at the end of October, hang in there a couple weeks into November until we get that next new moon. So that's okay. That's my last wide view thing. Let's see. Oh, we got more people. We got Debbie. Hey, Debbie, welcome. Good, nice to see you. We got Anna. We got Nikki. And not at nighttime this time. Yeah, it's like a reasonable hour in Europe. I didn't even like, I was just kind of, this was another one where I was just kind of forced into a corner. I was like, I just have to do it at noon on Wednesday. I have no other choice. But it did work out. I didn't even realize it worked out very well for the Europeans. Awesome. And we got a peanut butter sandwich. Yes, it's amazing. So happy for you, Nikki. I've got coffee. I've got lemon fizzy water. Wasn't a lemon fan. Now I'm a lemon fan. And I've been wondering if this is somehow solar remediation. I hope it is. I hope that can be it. Can I just drink something from a yellow can and have it fix my sun? Can that be a thing? That would be great. Okay, cool. So, time is very dense, Debbie. Yes, it's a dense pick. There's a lot in here. Oh, amazing. So happy to see familiar people. It's so nice. That's why I made this channel, because I was lonely. I always tell people that in consult who are like, I get a lot of people who are astrologers and like myself are kind of alone in their life being astrologers and don't have, like human flesh people to like speak to in this language and have it, it's nice to speak a language fluently to somebody. So when I get those lonely people in my office, I'm like, yeah, me too, also lonely. That's why I'm here. Oh yeah. I just had some jammy biscuits. My partner just made me some biscuits and put some jam on it. I had never had that. I've never had jam on a biscuit. It was effing amazing. It was so good. The simple things. It's so funny being a Capricorn person because, being the antithesis of Cancer, we just live our life without realizing like some really simple pleasures sometimes. And it's really funny when we run into them and it's like, oh, everyone's been enjoying this very simple pleasure this whole time without me. Like, what was I doing? Being a ninny. Okay, I think we're ready. We're 22 minutes in. Let's start. So okay. Oh, I guess I should say too, the Aries full moon that we're about to have, it's not like the super most warm and fuzzy, like, I don't know. I don't love it. It's not excellent. I'll just leave it at that. I think, yeah, it's like, it can be constructive. I think that was my cliff note last month was that Venus is in aspect. We can relate and work our way through, whatever that Aries full moon is going to be. But it just doesn't feel awesome because Chiron is also there involved very closely. So all to say, by the time we get to October 1st, then we've got, and I forgot to put the moon back. Then we've got the moon with Jupiter. And whatever happens in Aries, then we get a bit of a balm here. So we start the month with this exalted moon with Jupiter. That's been feeling pretty nice when I've been paying attention to it in the past. And we also have Mercury opposite Neptune. So we enter into this month in a place where I think we can recover from whatever happened with the full moon. If there is anything to recover from at all, maybe we just got a lot done and it was really busy. Most full moons are busy. And so by the time the moon gets into Taurus on the 1st, we can rest, relax, respond to whatever happened in Aries. Whatever we are responding to at that moment, Mercury is doing very, very well in Virgo, but it is opposite Neptune. So anytime Mercury is opposite Neptune, it's like a little 3-day period that I treat like a Mercury retrograde, diet, light, caffeine free. Like a baby's version of a Mercury retrograde, because of course, Neptune is uncertainty. It is not having the facts. It is not detail oriented, especially in Pisces, which is not helpful for doing material world stuff like measuring, measuring something that is a very material earth, but especially Virgo thing to do. Now, to put these two together, because if we can strike a cool balance in an opposition, we can get cool results. So in this case, anything maybe metaphysical, not material world, spiritual, artistic, anything where you have to really use your imagination, this would be a really good time to do it October 1st. And honestly, like coming into it. So end of September into October 1st, 2nd, this would be a great time to try to use both faculties of imagination, expansive, wide points of view, along with the more detail-oriented, practical point of view. This reminds me of, and now I can't remember who it was. I don't know if anyone remembers on Netflix. I think it's still on there. There was like a documentary series called Abstract. I don't know how to say, that must be how do we say abstract in the Midwest? I guess that's it. Anyway, there was a costume designer on one of the episodes, and she just won like some award for her costuming. But anyway, she was a great example of this because she, of course, had to envision and cook up, a whole theater production's worth of costumery, right? But she also would she researches historical details about those costumes, and she is measuring things very precisely and having to get them to fit on someone's body really precisely. So, kind of those artists that are also really serious craftspeople. Or when I put together like Pisces, Neptune, this whole axis, one of the other cool ways is very spiritual, but very specific ritual type stuff with your spiritual practices, or really detail oriented, or just getting into the nitty gritty processes that are involved in a lot of spiritual life. If you are having a serious spiritual path, you're probably having some routines in there and some things that are kind of tedious, and even if enjoyable or important. It's not, it's not all for nothing, but maybe in the beginning of the month, focusing on some of those things as well. And just making sure you do have all your I's dotted, T's crossed, et cetera, et cetera. I gotta increase the height of this thing. I'm still getting used to my standing desk, and wrong way. I don't know if I can do it. My hands aren't strong enough. So I'm just gonna, hold on. But I was also the one that tightened it. I hate when I make things too tight. Okay, there, I think we got it. I guess you're supposed to have like a fist worth between your face and the mic. Anyway, okay. What else do we have on the 1st? We've got, oh yeah, Mars in the South Node. Okay, so this is another interesting signature for the month. Just, I had mentioned Mercury and Mars both coming into the sun over the course of the next month. That in and of itself can be somewhat challenging for planets. It's not always going to result in inefficacy or the planet not being able to do what it wants to do, but it's going to change how it does it. It's going to be less obvious. It's going to be invisible. You might not, it might be things happening behind the scenes or under the radar. But also it can be difficult, and it can make those planets slightly less effective. For Mars, when it gets into Scorpio, that won't be a problem for it anymore because it'll be under its chariot, or in its chariot. I like to think of it like it's under, it's the tractor with the cab. It's a sunbrella. It protects you from the sun. So, Mars will have that when it gets into Scorpio. That aside, that whole thing paired with then also these planets marching toward the South Node and having to go through this point that is not the most vital. It's not the most energetic in a body sense, So by the 1st, Mars is within 3 degrees of the South Node approaching. So I think we'll definitely be feeling it by this point. I think we'll probably be feeling it before then. But again, as Mars moves into the South Node, the intensity of what we experience will increase. And I think what we'll be experiencing will be inconsistent motivation, inconsistent energy. Just not feeling super vital. Maybe our deciding faculties, our kind of leadership, I want to go and do this thing, that already is a bit compromised in Libra. Here, that get up and go is even more compromised. So I don't know. It's not the most, it's not the smoothest entry into a month, just with that. But that being said, all of that being said, right now we also have mutual reception. So maybe we should also start the month saying what is here. In that we've got this effective Mercury, we've got a nice mutual reception between Sun and Venus. So those two are really helping each other out. If you want to look to the Leo and Libra places of your chart right now, those areas can work together pretty harmoniously. And that's also really helping deal with whatever Mars is doing. So, if Mars is causing irritation, irritability, having to just put in a lot of effort and work really hard at something and feeling tired, there are a lot of resources that are available for us to deal with that, either in just our ability, if we're crabby, to just keep our shit together, or if Mars is struggling in some other way, maybe being able to ask for help, get help from friends, things of that nature. So that's very cool. But all to say, if your vitality is lower, if your motivation is kind of wavering on something, hang in there. It'll be better after October 12th. But yeah, this kind of entrance into the month, it's a little tired. It's a little tired of an entrance into the month. Venus is in Leo. Yeah, and they're still getting a square from Jupiter, which is great. We are also just finishing up that last Venus-Uranus square. Then on the 2nd, we are getting Mercury separating from Neptune. So that's going to start breaking up. And then Moon at the end of Taurus. So this was interesting because it's going to make, this is a thing that happens a few times this month, is planets at the end of Earth signs or at the end of things end up tangling with Pluto a bit. Now, this was a really resourceful is a good word. This is a really resourceful, but also potentially helpful interaction between all of these planets, and they're in Earth. So on the 2nd of October, if you have to figure out where to put resources, how to move your money around, how to move resources around, this is a good time to try to figure out those quandaries. If you are unsure how to prepare for the future, how to wrap up certain projects, this would be a good time as well to figure out those things. Just if you do have, now that, I was talking earlier about how this opposition with Neptune might have made Mercury a little bit compromised in its ability to do some of these tedious small detail things. Now that Mercury is separating and we've got kind of locked in with these other earthen influences, this does feel pretty constructive. So if you've got, material world things to do, get done, October 2nd looks better than the 1st. And then on the 3rd, this is when we get the actual perfection of Mars and the South Node. So this will be the most intense couple, 2-3 days of this wavering vitality or motivation. This is, this whole thing here with Sun, Mars, with the South Node, and Sun, Mars with Libra. It feels like 2 layers that say something somewhat similar, in that there are these planets of vitality and leadership and identity, like it's me and this is how I'm doing stuff and this is how I'm living my life. And in Libra, they're forced to bring in the other. They're forced to maybe compromise, to not get everything that they want, to not be able to be the way they want to be necessarily, for better or for worse, but there's definitely a clash in characteristics there between Sun, Mars, and what Libra is. And then also the South Node, this kind of lessening, letting go, decreasing type influence, also affecting these planets of identity, vitality, agency. So it really feels like, I don't want anyone to like abandon themselves or compromise their values, but there might be a feeling that we're doing that at some moments during the first week or two of October. So hang in there with things. Don't forget about yourself. But if you are kind of getting this grating or difficult situation, especially in the Libra part of your chart where, I don't know, you're having to compromise a little more than you'd like, that might be the case, and it might be temporary. So just hang in there. At the same time, especially when Mercury gets in here, we think about people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, our Saint Libran person. I'm pretty sure they've got all three of these in there, at least Mars. And I think I'm just going to look. I really just need to put her in my file, and I don't think I have. Yep, all three: Sun, Mars, and Mercury. Rod and rating A. Maybe I'll just bring it up and show you. Yeah. I don't know if y'all can see that, but I think I was talking about this at my last Q&A. Ever since Mars got into Libra, I myself have been a little bit more spicy about ideas. Every time I go on the internet, something's pissing me off. And usually I've been pretty chill. But as soon as Mars got into Libra, this place of idea and air and ideas and things like that, and Mars is conflict and fighting. It's like, yes, I would like to fight about this idea. Actually, you are an idiot. And of course, I just don't say anything. My drafts are always lit. But I can understand now, because I was like, how do people like AOC do it? How is she so just tenacious and persistent, and just like so much fire and vigor to argue about ideas with people? Thank God for my own personal bias. But this is how and why. She's got all these Libran air planets, but then Mars as well. So really wanting to kind of fight for what we feel is right and just. And of course, what everyone feels is right and just, that is really subjective, and that will be, subjective to each of us. But in Libra, especially with Mars there's a lot of fight there. So, I think all of these Libran influences could result in us, we could be very skillfully navigating healthy conflict with this. It doesn't have to be a problem. But I will say with Mars, with the South Node, that is what are we limiting? What are we decreasing or letting go of? Maybe a battle. Maybe we're letting go of a fight. Maybe we're letting go of, it could be just something we used to be more passionate about, and now we don't care. But we are letting go, or even if it's not letting go, I like to think of putting something down, just setting it down for a minute. You can always pick it back up. And to be honest, you probably will. A lot of times after the South Node is done affecting a planet or a sign by transit, sometimes that stuff that was lessened or disappeared comes back. It doesn't always, but sometimes it does. So just consider, in the Libra area, what efforts are you kind of needing a break from? What battles are you needing a break from? I think those are maybe good ponderables. And then too, we can extrapolate even further if you want to look at your own chart and see what house topics, because I use whole sign houses. So, when we look at where does Mars rule, well, they're going to rule Scorpio and Aries. So then look at the houses that are in those areas. So in this hypothetical chart, we are seeing this would, maybe be a letting go, a decreasing, also influencing this person's 12th and 7th. So, and just temporarily. And so also, if we've been really pushing hard in those areas, or if we have deadlines, like external deadlines, it's not always as simple as to just, say, oh yeah, I'm just not going to put an effort into that for a little while. Like that doesn't always work in real life. So then know, if you are in that position where you can't set it down, that, if it isn't moving along, or it's not progressing, or it's frustrating, like, again, just hang in there till after the 3rd, 4th, after Mars gets done with this. Particularly hang in there until October 12th, because that's when Mars is going to get into Scorpio. And I think that motivation, vitality, action piece will at least feel a little improved. We still have Sun in Libra, but anyway. Mars and South Node. Okay. Let's see here. I lost my notes. What did I say? Let's see, Mercury. Oh yeah, now on the 4th. Let's go to the 4th. So this is where Mercury is going to enter Libra. And there's several consequences of that. So I guess, if you've got those mercurial things to do, if you are a musician, if you are a buyer, seller, trader person who does a lot of money, commerce stuff, or barters or anything like that. If you are a bard, Mercury was a bard, or bards are mercurial. Mercury was a bard, right? I mean, maybe not technically, but they made a lute out of a turtle. So I feel like that qualifies you for something. If you have detail-oriented things to get done, if you got little tedious tasks, get them done before the 4th. Get them done before if you can get them done on the 3rd or before, that would be great. We can get this Mercury in Virgo action. After that, then we have Mercury in Libra, which is fine. But Mercury now has lost some of its resourcing and some of its favorite tools to do its job. Mercury in Libra, now we put all of those tools of cognition and thinking and planning and talking and speaking and listening and all those things into the relational sphere, into an artistic sphere in its own right. So, the time for poetry and music is still here, but the technical bits might not be as tight. So yeah, here we get Mercury, the composer, to putting together all the pieces to make them fit in a harmonious kind of pleasing way, whether that's aesthetically pleasing, auditorily pleasing, anything like that. Just putting together little pieces into a composition that's nice. Mercury and Libra is really good at doing that. They are now, you know how I was just talking about Mars and Scorpio and the chariot and this umbrella that protects it from the sun when it's too close within 15 degrees? Mercury just had that and now it lost it. So Mercury was being protected here by the beams of the sun. Now it's not going to be once it's in Libra. So at this time, then we need to, understand that our communication, all of those types of pieces, we can still do them. They might not be as easy increasingly as the month goes on, but I'm not too worried about it. So we also have Mars present. They're quite a bit of ways away, but they are now in the same room influencing each other. So right now, again, just to speak to the quality of time right now, I personally am feeling this. Granted, it's also in my place of ideas and beliefs. So for me, it's doubling up, making me angry about things, about ideas. But if it was in your 6th here, this could be you putting in a lot of effort toward figuring out a nice workout plan. But, this might be being irritated with someone at the gym. This might be like, God, why doesn't that guy get done with his 3rd set? How long does it take to do 30 squats? Now that's all maybe going on in our head. But once Mercury gets in here, I might want to say something about it a little bit more, because the mouthpiece joins in with these other places of agency and autonomy and things of that nature. So just be careful with your words. Anytime Mercury and Mars are in the same room, we get a little bit spicier with our vocab. That can be really awesome if you are having to write a lot, having to get a lot of cognitive heavy lifting done. This is great for that. But if you're feeling spicy relationally speaking, this could also, be you becoming the debate team champion. If this is in your 7th house, if you're an Aries rising, this is taking all the devil's advocate positions and just being irritating. So, pick your battles. At this point, what did I actually brought up? I brought up a little picture for us. I'm going to show you. So this is for the 6th or so. Yeah, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, just with Mercury and Mars together, pick your battles, pick fewer battles than that, put some battles back. That's still too many battles, choose very wisely, because as well, we have Mars. We need to think about Mars in terms of our ability to fight, our ability to do Mars things like conflict. Mars and Libra is not, they can be very skillful with conflict, but when we think about how Mars likes to do conflict: direct, assertive, aggressive, quick. No one wants to fight for a long time. If you fight, the ideal fight is the quickest, most minimal one you can possibly have. And that is not, Mars is not in its strength to be able to fight in a really skillful way here, in like a way that Mars would like. I hope that makes sense. But if let's say I'm trying to choose the perfect weather to do battle, this would not be it. I would choose a Mars in Scorpio to maybe do a battle, but I want Mars on my side for that too. But here, like, Mars is also with the South Node. This feels like a warrior that has been told that they have to sit through a bunch of legislative diplomatic dinners before they're allowed to do what they want to do to win this battle. And they are also injured and very tired and underfed. So, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like, again, so when I say choose your battles, it's because like the fighter you chose is not the strongest one. Think about Super Smash Brothers and whoever the worst one is on there. I forget. Okay, I'm going to check in with the chat and see what people are saying. Debbie. That's so sweet. That whole interaction just grew my heart 10 sizes. That was so nice. Yeah, taking a break from family drama, says Nikki Nice. Yeah, what was it? Young Pueblo, whose real name is Diego Perez. He says, letting go is not the same as not caring. Just because we let go doesn't mean we don't care. It doesn't mean we gave up. That's the other thing. Just letting go does not mean giving up. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean that you aren't going to work on that problem or that challenge again later. So when I say setting it down, that also doesn't mean that you don't care, that you've given up, but everybody needs a break. Everybody needs rest. Oh my goodness. That is the skillful use of Mars. I heard a really unskillful Mars. I'm going to talk shit. I'm going to trash talk someone for a second. There's some random person, some like CEO of something on Twitter. It doesn't even matter. It was going around. Everyone was really mad about it because he basically said, like, you don't need weekends if you love your work. That was basically what he said, was like, everyone needs to forget about weekends. Weekends are invented. We can all just work all the time. The problem is we just don't like our work. Crazy person. So anyway, I won't get into it, but that's unskillful Mars. Anyone who's been to a gym knows that you have to rest after you work really hard. That's how you get progress and growth. So, when Mars is with the South Node, or when Mars is just struggling for whatever reason, that can just be us doing the needed rest sometimes in that cycle. And if that is in your birth chart, then in your life, you might be dealing with, amongst other cool things, and being forced to be resourceful makes you creative. That's why AOC is so good at politics, probably, with that Sun, Mars, and Libra. But it also can be that maybe some of the experiences in your life are going to be learning how to navigate life using effort skillfully. And that might be something that is a larger part of your life. But anyway, that dumb on the internet wasn't doing it. So, okay, we need to rest. We might be resting at the beginning of the month, and that's cool. What else is happening? Okay, on the 7th, the 6th and the 7th, we approach, because, okay, we got the moon in Gemini. These days, I haven't been loving this overcoming square from Saturn when Mars is in Gemini, or when the moon is in Gemini, sorry. If you feel, the weight of the world, it's just that all the responsibility, all the things we have to do with Saturn, and the moon just feels it very vividly when it's getting that overcoming square from Saturn. So just be kind to yourself, be nice to yourself on the 3rd and the 4th when the moon is getting that square. If you're feeling really hard on yourself, or like really discouraged or anything like that on the 4th or the 5th of October, it's probably just just Saturn, hang in there. And then on the 5th, we get moon into Cancer, which is usually pretty nice. We're going to have this nice overcoming sextile from Jupiter, which is great. But especially once we get toward like the 6th and the 7th, the moon starts to approach this T-square with Pluto and Mars. So let's watch the moon. So yeah, by the 7th, we get a T-square between Pluto, Mars, and the moon. And yeah, this can be challenging. This can feel kind of grindy. Depends on what house topics it's in. The last time we had this, and just like I hadn't even thought about Mars, because Mars wasn't in this T-square by degree or anything like that. But it's in my 6th house, and my 6th and my 12th, and I cried about an old pet. I like had this like wave of grief come about an old pet that I had. And that's in my 6th, moon was in my 6th house of pets, and, in my 12th, Pluto, Capricorn, grief, things of that nature. So that made a lot of sense. So, I mean, that was kind of a sad example. I think I also felt really determined that day to like do a bunch of domestic stuff that I didn't get done. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't think this is going to feel great. I'm just going to be real with y'all. October 7th. I'm going to keep to myself. I'm going to mind my own business. This is a mind your own business day if I ever did see one. And also not helping by sign, Chiron is in there. So sure, you know what? I don't want it. I don't want whatever they have. I don't want it. Then on the 8th, this is our last day with Venus in Leo. This is our last day of this mutual reception, where it really does help to wrangle whatever Mars is doing. Now, granted, Mars gets out of Libra a few days after this. So, Mars is we're not benefiting from this mutual reception to handle Mars, but it's only going to be like that for a few days. So I would say then too, like October 9th through October 12th, I think those might especially be days where, like, if there's something really insignificant in the grand scheme of things, like, pick your battles. Don't pick that one. Don't pick the insignificant one. And I can see an argument. I wonder if, because, Venus in Leo, especially Venus in the last decan of Leo that is Mars ruled, that's pretty warrior Venus-y, honestly. And now I'm kind of second guessing and wondering if this is almost making the potential hostilities worse, or the potential irritations or clashes more, because Venus is kind of almost adding to it in a deleterious way. I'm not sure. So I guess maybe I'll have to experiment with this and see, do we feel spicier with the mutual reception, or do we feel less spicy with it? I don't know. Are we able more to wrangle all of the spiciness potentially into a fun and flirty way with the mutual reception? And then it's harder to do that with Venus and Virgo. I think that's where I'd start. I was like, well, maybe she can use her charms to kind of, just kidding, just, no big deal. And then when she gets into Virgo, we kind of lose that charm. But I can also see an argument for Venus adding to the spice, because she is in a fire sign that is decanically ruled by Mars. I don't know. Well, and the bound too. If she's in the last few degrees, that means that her bound ruler is also going to be, I don't know which one it is, Mars or Saturn, one of them. Because of course we know that the end of every sign is ruled by a malefic bound ruler. Surprise. Demetra George explains the bound ruler as like a homeroom teacher. And so you can think about, planets in that bound. What is their homeroom teacher like? Are they more lenient, or are they a jerk? So we've got a few planets right now that are in the last few degrees. Mars is almost, that's the 28th and 29th degree there. So almost there. Yeah, and it can just be, it can add a layer of intensity to it. So when people talk about those anaretic degrees, I think there's a whole like modern thing about them that I don't quite understand, and I probably can't repeat accurately, so I won't. But from my perspective, like an anaretic degree, that experience of like extremeness or whatever it is, boundlord, you know, being an extreme planet that stands for instability. Makes sense. And that instability piece too, that actually fits, because I thought that the modern folks talked about it's like this transitional moment, right? Because you're about to go to the next sign, right? And certainly malefics and their instability and that word, all of that speaks to that change. You know, maybe this is a good segue, because I did want to mention in regards to the eclipses, which we're actually coming up to talk about our first one soon here, but they are unstable. Just by nature, they're inherently unstable. And in general, like especially new moons, beginnings and endings, you know, in their own right, every single month, inherently unstable. That's how that works. Anytime there's an ending and a beginning, something is changing, right? We were letting go of something and we're moving into something else. That's not stable. And I think we hear the word instability and it makes sense why. We immediately think that's a bad thing. We immediately think that that's unfavorable. And that makes sense because, of course, I think if humans can agree on anything, it's that we struggle with change. That is like, even if it's a change we want, it's always like some little bit of the struggle in there. But like, of course, change is great sometimes, right? When people have babies, they seem to be pretty happy about that most of the time. And that's a big change. Job changes that we want, moves, you know, all unstable. So when we have an eclipse, think about it that way. Or like, you know, I like to think about like hardened, really dry soil where you have to till it up. You have to violently dig and tear it up in order to be able to grow something in there. So, you know, yeah, very disruptive, but it doesn't have to be foreboding in that way. So I just want to clarify that, because it's really easy with astrology in so many ways to just immediately do that primal lizard brain thing that we're really programmed to do, is to find the threat. So yeah, and it's very context dependent. So, you know, if you've got a bunch of cool stuff going on and there's an eclipse in that area of your chart, you don't have to be scared, but it can definitely reflect like, yeah, what's changing there? What are the new chapters that are happening, or the culmination of those new chapters? So anyway, our last day, I digress, big rabbit hole there, but we got Venus finishing up her time in Leo finally. I guess, you know, other little reflection point, great time to think about that whole Venus retrograde thing we all just went through. Granted, coming out of the post retrograde shadow now, having our last square with Saturn or with Uranus. That's actually happening right now. Whoop. Today, on the 27th, PS, we're coming into this last square. So we're still at this moment, we're still getting, I think, the tail end of all of the meaning of this, all of our, and, you know, meaning aside, just we may have experienced some reconsiderations of things, some big upheavals or changes that have left the Taurus part of our chart looking very different, or the way that we relate looking really different. I think this was a huge recentering process for a lot of us, coming back to the self in that Leo part of our chart, coming back, especially with Venus there, coming back to our values, recentering in with our preferences, honoring, you know, what we desire. And hopefully now, you know, with Venus coming to the very end of that on the 8th, we can look back and see what that was all about. The moon is going to be in here to say bon voyage to Venus. So we will likewise, I think, have a very nice, clear view of that ingress. I like that. I like when the moon is around for interesting things. It helps us see it better. And then there she goes. So at this point, now we will be having no direct interaction with Mars for a few days. We will, of course, be having this opposition with Saturn, which we will discuss. The cool thing about Venus going into Virgo here is we will then be having it for the whole time she's in here, this nice sign-based trine coming in from Jupiter. This is a condition of bonification. And a condition of bonification is a time when this planet here that's receiving the nice aspect from Jupiter, that really helps Venus a lot. That's a huge mitigating factor for her for this entire time she's in here. So as much as we are getting the hardest kind of aspect from Saturn, we're also getting a really, really helpful one. And Venus is in her own, like dignity-wise, she likes being in Earth. Jupiter, who is helping her, is in her sign. So she's able to receive Jupiter there, and that strengthens their connection even further. So that's all very cool. I don't mind a lot of what Venus has here in Virgo, but of course we know that Venus is in the technical term is in her fall. And this is a place of lowliness, of being dishonored in a lot of contexts. We can think about it's the opposite of when Venus is exalted in Pisces. In Pisces, she's the guest of honor. In Pisces, Venus is kind of getting and expecting the best. Here, Venus is not getting the best and not always expecting the best either, in some regards, in terms of relating. It's just, I like to think of Venus as being so different from this place as well. Like, besides the Earth thing, we can think about Venus as like this connecting, bringing things together type energy, wanting to bring people together, being like an even numbered, like two, bringing two things together, versus Virgo, which has this energy of if this, then that. It is very compartmentalized. It is dry. It is not necessarily connecting things. And in fact, it would really like to separate things into their perfect little places. So, when we have Venus in Virgo, it's not that Venus can't Venus, but she's going to do so in a way that's a little different. And when Venus is Venusing, she's going to be doing it in a really Virgo way. So she's going to be more practical. She's not as warm and fuzzy here. Very much like can be compassionate and giving and helpful. But it's definitely coming from a more rational place of like, yeah, this just looks better like that. Or this is just the easier way to do it. Or this is the better way to do it. It's not like in this means of superiority. It's just like, yeah, that could be better and this could help. So it's definitely like, okay, we think about Martha Stewart, craftsmanship, craftspersonship, but I also like to think of the meddler, the person who meddles, because it's relational and Virgo likes to fix stuff. So we could be wanting to fix relationships, fix people, fix anything that's aesthetic. Either I'm straightening this picture frame on the wall, or I'm trying to straighten out this partnership, or whatever it is. So just make sure you're invited and welcome. And as long as you are, you got the green light. But that's, so we get Venus in Virgo. We're getting help from Jupiter. So looking to the Taurus part of our chart, if for whatever reason our relating, our ability to seek pleasure or feel pleasure is in any way hampered during this time, starting after October 8th, we can look to the Taurus part of our chart and see what kind of assistance might be there for us to help. What else am I missing about that? Yeah, so that Saturn opposition, let's talk about that. So right as she gets in there, being Saturn is so early. Like, is it even at, it's just at 1 degree. This will be done by early on the 10th. So really only there's a couple days of it. I mean, I'm sure we'll be feeling it even before Venus gets in here, like, even October 4th, 5th, we're going to have Venus only like 3 or 4 degrees away from Saturn. So as she moves closer, we're already going to be feeling this. And what will we be quote unquote feeling? Saturn is it is rejection, responsibility, difficulties, challenges. So Venus is looking over the way, across the way, and seeing kind of the weight of things, or the mountain to climb, or the resounding no, or whatever it is over yonder. And that generally can feel, I mean, if anything, if it's not something really specific like that, it can just be a general sense of malaise, a general sense of like, I am not whistling at work right now. I am not feeling super great about, what I'm toiling away at, but it's temporary. So we're going to feel like that, maybe on the 9th, but once we get to the 10th already, Venus is already separating by degree. We're going to deal with this the whole time she's in here, which again is till November 8th. So I should bookend that. October 8th till November 8th. That is Venus here. Yeah. And then the moon meets her. So we'll feel for sure, if you're wondering, if you're wondering on the 9th and the 10th, is that Venus's ingress into Virgo I'm sensing? Then by the 11th, when the moon gets in here, you can confirm and say, yes, that was that. So we'll be getting another echo of whatever this Venus-Saturn opposition is. I've been talking to some clients who've been having Saturn oppose their natal Venus in Virgo. And it really has been, I mean, it's been, I don't know, two or three people I've heard say almost verbatim the same thing, that it is just hard for them to feel pleasure. It's just a little difficult for whatever reason, whether it's accessibility to what is pleasurable, the execution of it, any part of that stage of getting a desire met, it can be a little impeded, a little difficult. Just know that this is temporary. What I think this could be really helpful for is when we do see those mountains, and they're not going to be new ones, by the way. I think this is just going to be the same old Virgo Pisces thing we've been having ever since March, ever since Saturn got in here, of like, yep, here's this area of your life that you're reconstructing over here in Pisces. What are all the little things that you have to do to make it happen? And now that Venus is in here, that relational component is really coming in. Okay, yep, that big mountain is still here, whatever that is. And now how are relationships factoring in? How are my desires factoring in? Mountain, but what do I want to do? Hopefully you want to do that mountain. It's values as well. Do my values align with what is growing or building over there? Whatever kind of structure or form might even feel limiting over in Pisces, whatever is taking shape, even if it's just in your mind so far about what could take shape, considering, okay, does this align with my values? Does this align with can I actually embody the details of these values? I was just listening to The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, that book. My partner was listening to that, so now I'm listening to that. It's pretty good. They say a lot of Buddhisty things, but like there's like this dude bro talking about it. So if you want to trick your dude bro brother-in-law into doing Buddhist things, have them listen to what did I just say? The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. But he was talking about how, like, yeah, we have these values, but we don't, when it comes time to actually embody them, we do not, or we don't realize that our values, when we get really into the detail of like, why do I value that? The reasons behind it are kind of junky. Like, oh, I just wanted that because I'm uncomfortable being seen this way or that way, and that's like clearly not a good reason in my mind, at least. So yeah, it could be more of those internal conversations. I do think, being these are nocturnal, earth, water, a lot of this is a little bit more internal things that are happening, realizations and stuffs. So yeah, I think we'll have a whole good month till November 8th to explore how our desires, values, preferences, relationships are factoring into whatever is kind of building along this Virgo Pisces axis, and then vices as well. So if Venus is what we find pleasurable, what is delightful to us, sometimes that can come into the form of vices, addictions, things of that nature. So in Virgo, it's a great time to kind of pick apart at that too, if that is where you are in that path right now. I think that's all I have to say about Venus in Virgo. Oh yeah, and then the Earth trine of it all. That was the other part of it. because of course, as Venus treks along and gets to the end, she'll have this interaction with Pluto. But yeah, there's this nice Earth trine happening where we've got both benefics and Pluto. And Pluto is in this kind of 6-month chunk of time where it is hanging out in Capricorn, kind of doing unfinished business with the Capricorn part of our chart. And now with both benefics here in trines, this is a good time to leverage and work on whatever those remaining little hiccups are. So, if this is, say, in your 10th house, if you're an Aries rising and you've got Pluto in your 10th house and your life path, trajectory, career, whatever that is, if that's still kind of like feels out of your control, feels a little unwieldy, maybe there are some patterns there that are playing out that we're aware of, but we just still haven't gotten quite free of them yet, whether those are externally related or internally related, usually both. Now Jupiter and Venus can really help with those things. And what is helping? You then look to Taurus, what things in that area of life are helping. Again, if you were an Aries rising, that would be resources. Maybe your money is finding some level of stability. Resources are somewhat helpful. And we also get, maybe the 6th house and daily routines, health, how you maintain your health, where you show up to work. So we could have some headway in money making, bill paying work, getting resources in order, getting the relationships in order in the ways that we want them to affect this life trajectory in a really cool way. So there's a lot of opportunity there. We do have to meet opportunity, but yeah, I think it's there. And again, that will especially be the case till November 8th. So as much as, Venus in Virgo is not being given all her favorite things to do her works, this feels like there's some good things we can do with this guy for sure. Let me check in with the chat. It has been a moment. Excuse me. All right. Hello, Clarkson. Welcome back. Good to see you. They said that their Octobers have had a track record of life-changing events, so I wonder what's going to happen this time. Yeah, that's always an interesting thing to reflect on with our own charts and our own lives. Like before I knew astrology, I would tend to blow up my life in either like the fall or the spring. It was usually the spring. Things would happen for me in the spring. And I haven't really dug as much as I could, but now that I know astrology, I'm like, oh yeah, in the spring, everything is going through Aries. And for me, my Aries has Jupiter and the lot of fortune. So shit's just going to happen. And there might be liberatory shit would always happen to me during those times. I would get out of certain situations, which Jupiter tends to do. It can liberate us from things. So for me, I think that was what it was my Aries place was being activated by the annual transits of, Sun, Mercury, Venus going through there. So look in your chart and see if you have things, that are transiting in October. So Libra placements, Scorpio placements. And if you have natal placements there, that can explain why, every year or every other year, or, when shit does happen, it's in this season or whatever it is. That can be the case. Debbie's our Venus and Virgo representative in the chat. I'm glad I hit it. I always, it's funny when you have that placement and someone's talking about it. I got and this was after, this was after Mars was into Libra. This was actually my first sign that I was feeling extra spicy and that it was going to be a long 6 weeks. Someone posted about the Pisces full moon, and I have a Pisces moon. And so I'm very critical of anyone who writes anything about Pisces moons. But they said, get ready to cry. It's a Pisces full moon. And I almost flipped the table. I was like, how dare you? I do cry, but it's not a guarantee. Because people with those placements, they know, but you also have to be aware of all the other things that are affecting that placement. So for those of you who are newer to astrology, or just kind of getting into it and you haven't quite got to like bringing in all of the pieces of the chart together, I'm not a stereotypical Pisces moon either, which I have to remember because mine is very malefically influenced. Mine's hemmed in by, like Saturn and Mars and all of these things. So it changes my Pisces moon. So then even when I want to be like, I know all about what it's like to be a Pisces moon, honestly, I don't though, because my Pisces moon is so affected by other stuff. There's probably other people out there who have a better idea of like pure Pisces moon than I do. I don't know. I digress, but hopefully you picked up what I was putting down. Mona, me, I love your name. That is so fun to say. Venus already opposed to Saturn in the natal chart, got rejected from 2 job offers and a new friendship. Oh, Momo, I am so sorry. I'm going to send you the biggest hug. It's like such vibes coming to you. There was some meme, it said, if it doesn't kill me, that saying, if it doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger. There's another one that's like, if it doesn't kill me, it just makes me harder to relate to. Makes me stronger and harder to relate to. Hopefully that's not you, but it does make you more empathetic. That's that kind of 12th house journey, or any difficult journey, I guess. You can at least empathize with others who have gone through similar struggles. I'm sorry, that's like the worst silver lining on the planet. Yeah, Clocks, and go take a look, see what you got going on there. See why October is your month. Yeah, and to Momo, the other thing with that is that, all of the constructive things that I mentioned ring true as well. So if I was like a project manager, I would probably want you on my team to make shit happen and to make things come into the real world. Anytime we put together like things like Sagittarius and Pisces, those kind of dreaming Jupiter, like, if we can envision it, if we can build it, they'll come. Then when we get like Saturn in with that influence, so if you are of that subgeneration that has Saturn and Pisces, or anything like that, you get like Saturn and Jupiter together, you get this world building kind of ability, this world building quality of bringing reality to what was imagined, or bringing what we hope for into reality. And that process of doing that, like that sounds, bringing my dreams into reality. But the real process of what that looks like is someone looking at their bank account and realizing they don't have enough money to buy the thing they want to buy. Like the piece of software that I really want right now, that's $450. Not happening. But then knowing that you can do this other thing, that's what that process looks like. Or it's realizing your limitations, or realizing this is the shit that I have to get around or conquer or whatever. And not everyone is able to see those things, because you have to be very brave and very hardy to look at those things directly in the face. But if you have something like a Saturn, Venus opposition in your chart by sign, or those combinations of like benefic and Saturn, I think it does end up being kind of that gritty kind of world building quality. So you at least have that going for you, I can guess. And anyway. Right. What else do we got going on? So we said that the 7th was a mind your own business day. The 8th is our last day of Venus and Leo. Then Venus is opposing Saturn, but just until the morning of the 10th. And it's Moon opposite Saturn, then conjunct Venus. Yeah, that is over by the 10th. And then what happens after that? Let me just make sure, because I think there's a benefic enclosure here. I think benefic enclosure alert. Hold on one second. Yeah, it's most of the day on the 10th. It's such a weird little set of days. Okay, I'm going to back up again. Sorry. I know I'm repeating myself. Last day of Venus in Leo on the 8th. And then the other thing that I skipped over was that the sun is opposing Chiron. That was the other thing. So this area of time, like the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, it's leading into a void of course moon. It's leading into an eclipse. But before the void of course moon and before the eclipse, we have this Venus making their big change, making their big shift, dealing with a short-term degree-based opposition with Saturn that completes by the 10th. At the same time, Sun is opposing Chiron, which just feels like we're dealing with, of course, we're dealing with wounds, and that you can be on the other side of that. You can be on the healing side of that too. But it's in general not like super awesome feeling. Let's see. Yeah. So by the morning of the 10th Central Standard Time, Venus has cleared their opposition. Then the moon echoes it. Okay, then on the 10th, so the evening of the 10th, then the moon enters into a benefic enclosure. So there's like a bunch of crunchy, weird weather happening around. And then on the 10th, we get a little window, like a little reprieve. Sorry. Let's see. Yeah, so like, okay, October 10th, about 4:45 in the evening. Why am I in Warsaw, Poland? Have I been here this whole time? It doesn't matter that much, but okay. Jesus, we're in NASA now. I was looking at something. Anyway, okay. Okay, we're back on track. October 10th, about, let's say 10 in the morning, 10 in the morning, Central Standard Time, until, and we have like a whole day. It's awesome because then it's going to be running into a trine with Jupiter. So conjunction with Venus, trine with Jupiter, and then that is going until October 11th at about 10 in the morning. So we get about a day's worth of moon and benefic enclosure, mostly on October 10th. It's a little tiny window that might be somewhat decent in what otherwise is weather that I don't love. I've talked about Chiron at length at my last Q&A. Actually, someone asked about Chiron, so I gave my whole spiel on Chiron at my last office hours. It's like the last one that I had. That was on the 14th. So if you want to pop over to that 14th office hour I had, I go through a whole spiel on Chiron. But Chiron speaks to something that is challenging for us. It can come up repeatedly over the course of a life. But in general, it's something where we struggle with it enough to become an expert in it, understand it at depth, be able to help other people with similar challenges. So there are these archetypes of like the teacher, the mentor that became that teacher mentor through struggle, through its own personal hardship with that. That is one means of it. It could just be as simple as healing yourself on a difficult matter throughout the course of a life, even if no one ever knows, so anything like that. And it's, in an opposition with the sun in Aries and Libra. It's interesting because it's like, I was mentioning before how interesting it is that we have these planets of selfhood, identity, sovereignty, agency in a place where they're forced to compromise more than they would probably like. So that ability to reinforce that sense of identity in Libra is not easy or simple. And then Chiron is in a place of Aries, individuation, agency, autonomy, me, singular, one, I. So this really feels like just this rub between how am I able to individuate but also feel like I belong? How am I able to feel like I have agency, power, autonomy, control over my situation in my life in Aries, and at the same time, not put someone else offside? And that can be a really tense kind of struggle that is happening here, whether it be internally or in our interpersonal relationships. So this could also be, one more positive delineation I thought for this, in conjunction with this solar new moon eclipse that's happening in Libra, is perhaps we are on the other side of that healing. Perhaps we have figured out kind of that balance of like, yep, I had this wound around being myself and individuating and doing my own thing. And because I have worked on that ouchy thing, I am now able to come together in partnership in a new, beautiful way. And a new chapter is opening up for me in these regards. But yeah, maybe it's challenging. Even these new chapters can be, because it's a learning curve. Everything's a learning curve when we're starting off. So I do think that there is some possibility for some constructive stuff here. But yeah, like, I don't know, it's not like fun. It doesn't feel fun. Not that everything's about fun, but if I'm trying to describe it, that is not the word that I would use. Okay, so then we've got this benefic enclosure happening. We know that that is happening. That's cool. Then on the 11th, this is our last little moment before the void of course moon. So before I go on to my void of course moon spiel, I will check on the chat. Yeah, Momo, Saturn and Pisces can be super cool. Everything can be cool. Everything in astrology is a coin with two sides. Every single thing has the opportunity to come out in a way that is skillful, wholesome, not shitty. It won't always. There's always a potential for it to come out shitty, but there's also a potential for it to come out in a way that's not. And that is like my favorite exercise with astrology, is anytime I see a planet in a place, anytime I see a sign, a planet, anytime I see anything, I try to, of course, there are some interpretations that will be quick in our mind to come up. But then I also challenge myself to push it and think, okay, if I thought of a happy example of this, what would be the unfavorable? Or if I thought of a favorable example, what would be the unfavorable version of this? Because it can always be both. So, and it depends on like a billion things. And it depends on a billion things, but also non-astrological things too. Holistic approaches. I digress. Also, I will say too, I love Saturn and Pisces right now, specifically because by transit, Neptune has been in there all by itself, doing God knows what, all on its own. And now that Saturn is here, it's like daddy's home. It's like, okay, like what the hell's going on over there? Stop that. It's a little too much. Momo has Chiron first house. Oh yeah, so you're going to be, so they have Aries, Libra, Chiron stuff. Yeah, that whole thing is going to be. So all the Aries and Libra babies, all the Aries and Libra rising babies, specifically you, this nodal business, the lunar node, south node, north node across Aries and Libra, it is an 18-month, which we have about 16 months left. So a year and a half of this rebalancing process, not necessarily stable, but it is a rebalancing of things generally over that 18 months for hell or, for better, for worse, hell or high water. But certainly moving right now with the North Node being in Aries. And this is just good news or good information for everybody. This is an increasing, well, not Chiron, this is an increasing influence from the North Node. It's a decreasing influence with Libra. So this hasn't, Mars and Libra's had me again spicy, but also the North Node in my third house of Aries. Yeah. Well, so if you've got Aries in your first or your third, or maybe you've got a Mercury in Aries, maybe we're all in, I guess any Aries placements that are like Sun, Moon, Venus, Mercury, those the personal planets, that North Node increasing Aries energy. It's like bork, 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 bork. It's very bork, bork, bork. So, again, like remember the Viking, just we're all choosing our battles. God. I wanted to tell this anecdote. I had a really choose your battles thing the other year that I think about it because I'm just like, wow, who is she? Like, how did she do that? She being me. I worked for a dance studio. I was a dance instructor, and I made some classes and I named them really cool names. My classes had cool names. And that studio teaching experience did not turn out how I liked it to. And then I got overwhelmed with life. So I had other work. My astrology stuff was kicking off. So I had to quit. And when I quit, the studio owner said that she was basically keeping my class names and my work, essentially, which is like this idea about what this class is. And she was just going to keep teaching it. And I thought, I was like, I could really, like, people get mad about stuff like this. Like, you know, people kind of stealing the name of your whole course or whatever. And I didn't go there. I did not pick that battle because I knew that she was crazy. That was thing one. I didn't want to open that can of worms. Thing two, I knew that I was a wellspring of creativity on my own. I could stand without anything to do with her or that whole experience. So it was the cost benefit analysis was not there. And I chose my own piece. So I think sometimes some of the most Aries shit that you can do actually looks a little Libran oddly. I don't know. It's not always obvious, because on the outside, it looked like I was being very Libra, and I was, you know, on the outside, it looked like I was being diplomatic. I was also, you know, protecting my own peace and also believing in my own damn self to be, you know, a firm pillar on my own Aries, right? So I don't know, there's so many interplays there of just like protecting your peace and living a peaceful life and having to deal with all of like the conflict and internal tension that actually goes along when you have restraint. And we can't forget that, you know, Saturn finds their exaltation in Libra, and there's a lot of restraint that needs to happen in order to have peace sometimes. And that takes a ton of sometimes effort, martial effort to restrain oneself. That's going to be kind of a nice thing, maybe potentially, depending on the context of like when Mars gets into this nice trine with Saturn, that feels like healthy restraint potentially. So we'll see. I digress on my digression. Thanks, Robert. You're awesome too. I appreciate you. Yes, Daddy's home. All right. Oh no, I lost my notes. Are we on to the void of course moon? Yes, we are. What the heck is that? So there's a bunch of different definitions for a void of course moon. Most of us are familiar with the Renaissance medieval-y definition of within 16, 17 arc minutes or so. I use that. And I think if you're doing like astrological magic or really precise timing of rituals and things, and you're already doing that amount of work, then yes, use the precise medieval definition of arc minutes. Or wait, no, I just was conflating Cazimi. Sorry, scratch all that. I just by habit launched into an explanation of Cazimi. Whoa, I am on autopilot, clearly not good. Okay, just kidding. Whoa, start over. Okay, void of course moon. There are many definitions. There is a medieval one. It's not that. It's not the Cazimi thing. The medieval version of a void of course moon, like the Renaissance version that William Lilly used, was anytime the moon was in a sign and it was not going to make any other aspects with any planets before it leaves that sign. And you can use outer planets. If you're a modern astrologer, you're probably using outer planets in that definition. So the void of course moon, you know, especially with like Pluto at the end, it's probably not going to be happening as often, but there's really specific examples that happen pretty frequently with void of course moon. The almanacs that like tell you when to go fishing or plant seeds or not. They're mostly looking at like, okay, is the moon making an aspect with any other planets before it leaves that sign? So that's thing one. The Hellenistic definition is rarer, which doesn't make it more important. Rarity, I don't give a shit about rarity, actually. It's exciting from a brain point of view, but rarity doesn't mean something is more effective or more special. Rare does not mean more potent necessarily. But this is more rare because the Hellenistic void-of-course moon, it has like, we have to meet criteria that aren't as common. It doesn't happen as often. So here we have to have the moon go 30 degrees. We have to have the moon go 30 whole degrees without making contact with a visible planet. And that can go across sign barrier. So that's the big difference, is like, it doesn't just, we don't get to start over as soon as we hit a sign. That void of course moon can still be going on in the Hellenistic times. So it only happens a couple times a year usually. We had some in, I think it was April, we had one. And usually they last for about 3 days, because that's how long it takes the moon to go 30 degrees, is about 3 days. And we get this. So the last aspect the moon is going to make is this trine with Jupiter. And then it's not, if we don't count the outer planets, if we don't count any of that, then the next aspect it's going to make won't actually be until, well, what did I say it was? Until it reaches Mercury. So that's on the 14th. So from 10:05 in the morning, Central Standard Time on the 11th, so October 11th, 10:05 Central Standard Time, 13 degrees, 23 minutes of Virgo. That's when it starts. It ends on the 14th at 3:57 in the morning, Central Standard Time, at 16 degrees, 31 minutes Libra. It reaches Mercury, and then it has the solar eclipse right after that. So then what do we do with this information? Thanks, Claire. We got a moon that is something. So what we do with this information is we have to understand why we're going to be doing the thing or not doing the thing. So in general, don't start stuff. Don't plant seeds, don't go fishing, don't start a company, don't get married, don't do anything that you want to grow or anything you want to last, because the ancients said that nothing will come of it. When the moon is void of course, I think another word, one of the Greek terms was like, well, no, I'm not going to try because I'm going to get it wrong, but it loosely translates to running in the void, running in the emptiness. And that all comes from Chris Brennan. I think he talks about it in Hellenistic Astrology. And then Demetra George, Volume 1, Ancient Astrology, definitely talks about it in there, that the moon is basically not communicating with any of the other planets. And it's a very lonely moon. And it doesn't, when it's in this position, it's like trying to hold something without any handholds. It's like trying to plant something without soil. It's like just throwing a bunch of seeds at the wall and there's no medium for it to go into. It's like just yelling in an empty room. That's what it feels like. So the moon is the one planet that really brings together a lot of the other things in the sky. I think it was the Hermeticists talked about how the moon would bring the effluences of the other planets down to us, and more of this physical causal model of astrology. So the idea that the moon is really necessary for our experience, it's the closest thing to us, it's what is between us and everything else. So when we don't have the moon connecting with other planets, we don't have the moon able to engage or interact with all these other energies, it doesn't seem too crazy to think that nothing is going to come of whatever we start underneath that sky, if that's what's going to define that thing that we start during that time, which is why I say don't. So 3 days, I got to go to work, Claire. I got to do stuff. I have to make a cake for my child's birthday. Yeah, that's, you got to do stuff. Just don't be hard on yourself if the cake doesn't look like the picture. Don't be hard on yourself if you've been trying to get this project started and you're just struggling to find the energy or the motivation or inspiration. So it can be some days where we ourselves, if we feel, if kind of the moon reflects community and society, if we are the moon and our bodies are the moon and our feelings are the moon, if the moon is kind of lonely and running in the emptiness, we may feel a bit empty. So I like the void of course moon for really resting, meditative, contemplative states, times when being a bit untethered is actually kind of optimal, which for a lot of like artistic, spiritual works, it's kind of that more Neptune-y, non-material vibe, not that I want to at all conflate Neptune with this, but just that what I was talking about in terms of like, yeah, maybe we're going to have more success with immaterial things on these days. And then to not be hard on ourselves if, material things aren't coming into being how we wanted them to from the 11th to the 14th. And then again, just to remind us, the second one is from the 25th to the 28th. So if you could just pick 6 days of the month to not do the important stuff, those are the days you don't want to do the important stuff. 11th to 14th, 25th to 28th. Okay. Now, 12th, 13th. I think on the 13th, so, we're still in that void of course moon. And then we're going to get, on the 12th, Mars entering into Scorpio. So let's talk about that. So now Mars is protected from the beams of the sun, still hidden in the sky. So if we were to look up, we would not be able to see Mars, most likely at this point, being 11 degrees from the sun. That being said, very effective Mars. So this is kind of making moves in silence, planning your work, working your plan, strategies, skillful use of effort, which does include rest. And we're going to have this nice trine between Saturn and Mars. They're in water, so they just have a lot of some very internal kind of mechanizings happening here. It feels like that kind of deep yearning to pursue something and seeing the underlying plan of it all, not necessarily acting on it, maybe really wanting to, but now is not the time again, because we're in a void of course moon. So it'll be nice to just kind of take a day, get to feel what that feels like, having Mars in a different sign. Mars in Scorpio is generally going to hopefully feel a little bit more empowered to act how it wants to act, to do things in the order of operations that it feels is best. Yeah, and we'll talk more about this first area of Scorpio when we talk about the eclipses, but that is them. Now they will be getting a sextile from Venus and an opposition from Jupiter. So that's another thing to note too, is once Mars enters Scorpio, Mars, really big improvement in dignity. And we're getting help from both of the planets that talk about stabilizing and abundance and growth and connection. So this is, in your strategies, in your pursuits, not forgetting that we can ask friends for help. We can consider others in those plans, how they may be able to help us, not in like a weird manipulative way, but in a wholesome way. And of course, Jupiter is also able to witness Mars, and so can provide whatever abundance or stability that we have in Taurus, or optimism. Is there anything else important about that right now? I don't think so. I love Mars and Scorpio. I'm biased. I have one. We can over strategize. We can think too hard in some ways. So I guess in that kind of ability to think of the best way to do things in what order, and even in assessing threats, can be a little too effective at that sometimes. So just putting it out there. Let's talk about the first eclipse. Okay. I was just looking at my clock. I'm like, oh, we're only halfway through the month. I might be here for 3 hours, which is fine. I just have to be done by, I have a client. So I have to be done at a certain point. Okay. So the eclipse is going to happen at exactly October 14th, 12:55 p.m. Central Standard Time. So this is the middle of the day pretty much in the West and closer to the evening over in Europe into the 15th, if you are even further east. So on the 14th, we're getting a solar eclipse. This is the new moon one. I couldn't remember for the life of me how to remember which one was the lunar eclipse and which one was the solar eclipse for like a year. I couldn't remember. And the way that I finally remembered is that the solar eclipse, you can see, like, who can you actually see in that eclipse? You can see the sun. It's the solar eclipse. It's happening during the daytime. So the moon is going to, or the earth, whoever is going to occlude the light of the sun during the day, versus the lunar eclipse. You can see the moon. It's the full moon one. So it's going to happen for, if we were to see it, it would be happening at night. So that's how I remember solar eclipse, new moon, lunar eclipse, full moon. Who can I see? And this one is happening in Libra. So of course, look to the Libra part of your chart. And this is a new moon, but on the nodes, it's like a new moon that is dialed up. It is more intense of a new moon. So not just beginnings and endings like we always have every month, or new starts or whatever. It's a big version of that. So in this hypothetical person's 11th house, it would have to do potentially with their 11th house of friends, friend groups, networks of people, big new starts there, potentially endings, beginnings, that can happen, in this person. Maybe we could draw in, this Venus who's in aversion. Venus cannot really communicate in there. I know there's a mutual reception, but when there's a mutual reception of two planets that are not in aspect, it's like, yeah, they got all the sympathy in the world for each other. They can help each other potentially, but the phone lines are cut. Like, they're not communicating. So that being said, if I want to kind of bring these areas of life together, then maybe this person, it would have something to do with their career. Maybe they got a different job and now their friends changed. That's like so normal. That happens to us all the time. So that would be kind of a very more neutral, expected kind of thing that could happen with a solar eclipse in the 11th. Also, hopes, dreams, aspirations. Maybe this person is letting go of some things they used to really be on fire about and turning their sights towards some different hopes, dreams, or aspirations. Moon is going to keep moving. And the path that the moon makes after the new moon or full moon tells a story, as the moon does all the time as it moves around. So this is no different. But the planets that it runs into, like the first one is going to be a square with Pluto. So after this new moon, it's like, okay, we get our new start. It feels fresh. Maybe I'm thinking about the next 6 months to come, the next month to come. Again, eclipses are not good times to start stuff. Just think about it. Just watch it. It's not a great time to like sign the document, get married, etc. I'm not going to go down that road this time. Everybody else always does. You can listen to them argue about eclipses somewhere else. But I'm not starting anything on one. And it's going to hit Pluto. Then it's going to hit a trine with Saturn. And then it's going to hit a conjunction with Mars. So like the succession right after the new moon is like Pluto, Saturn, Mars. It's all the hardest metalist type planets, like the crunchy ones. I don't expect this new moon to feel soft. It doesn't feel soft. It feels kind of intense. So that's what I'll say about that. When I look at the planet in charge, Venus is not well resourced to be able to hold space for this energy. So I'm going to just be watching. I'm going to be watching the Libra area of my chart. I do think there are going to be some exciting new things there for all of us. But again, it's just good to kind of look on curiously, with curiosity, with hopefully only possibilities, no expectations. Because again, it's a little bumpy of a ride coming out of this. Now, we know then this connects with 2 weeks later, we get a full moon in Taurus. So that's what this will lead up to. So we're going to be watching from the 14th to the 28th, really what is coming up during that time. If there are things, like, your boss wants you to start a project, that's fine. Just know it's probably going to be baked in now to this 6-month clock of eclipses that, something probably will come of it. Maybe it'll just be completed in 6 months. Maybe it'll come to some other turning or pivot point in 6 months, but that's usually what I see when things begin during eclipses, because life happens and not everyone's an astrologer. I have seen people get married on eclipses and their marriages are fine and intact, but it really does go, the story of that partnership is affected by eclipses. Then it is just part of the same with birth charts. Eclipse babies, y'all tend to respond to these eclipse events a little bit more loudly or vividly than the rest of us. So not good or bad, but it's exciting. It's not the most smooth operating type of sky. Okay. What else do I need to say about it? Oh, Mercury's opposite Chiron, of course. So, oh yeah. So I gave a few other, so I had mentioned, okay, instability, not inherently good or bad. I had mentioned the tilling of dry soil so that we can plant seeds. Also, other examples of this, how nice it feels when our spaces are cleaned and rearranged, but that comes after the chaos of the cleaning and the rearranging. Also, the stronger bond of intimacy that happens with a couple or a friendship or a partnership after you've had some healthy, necessary conflict, that kind of feeling of peace and even increased stability after that. So when I say that eclipses are these rebalancing over that 18 months of what is a bit unstable energy, this is the vibe that I mean, is yes. And we have micro moments of this all the time. So that is the vibe of eclipses. And hopefully we come out on the other side feeling better about that area of life. Mercury opposite Chiron is another thing here. Now we can be on the healed side of this. One cute example is that, okay, we've kind of figured out how to individuate. We've figured out this Aries thing. I know how to stand into my power and compromise effectively with others in such a way that I still feel empowered. And maybe after doing that healing work, we're able to have some new chapters open up in the Libra part of our chart. For me, I think one of my examples with this is I've been healing things with my voice over the last several years. I can talk into a mic now without, I'm actually not sweating that much right now. It's a miracle. And now maybe I'm having some new chapters open up in my place of mass communication because I only sweat half as much as I used to. I also found a really good deodorant. That was also part of my Chiron journey, maybe, is finding the best deodorant ever for my sensitive little baby skin, my sensitive Pisces moon skin. So it doesn't have to be gnarly, but yeah. And generally, even in moments like that, where we see on the other side, it's wow, I've come really far. I've healed a lot. On the other side of that coin is the recognition of that there was something that I had to surmount, right? So, yeah, you could be on the other side of that healing. So watch out for that. But if you're not, you're getting prodded by something in your Aries Libra place, it could be that it still needs a little bit of TLC and attention. Let's see. Yes. Okay, on the 15th, I think that's all I have to say about the eclipse. So of course we want to watch 6 months from now, what happens, but yeah, let me see if there's any comments, concerns, questions. What's funny? So Anna brings up a really good point that they have some important appointments during the void of course moon on the 11th. We can actually use these to our advantage as well. So the great example, and I'm spacing her name. She did an episode on the Astrology podcast about the void of course moon. And forgive me, I'm going to try to link it below. But she's an astrologer. She would send in her tax returns during the void of course moon, because nothing will come of it, right? So what do we not want anything to come out of? So if I was going to be a real shyster, let's say I had a mother-in-law or something who really wanted to go out to dinner with me or something like that. Or maybe like I'm nervous about a thing. Maybe if I try to make the date on the void of course moon, it'll get canceled. I don't know. Maybe nothing will come of it. Like so if it's something that we don't want anything to come of it, I don't want anyone to know, I don't want this to turn into anything. Like if someone last time we had a void of course moon, it was this spring. Oh, this was, God, what was it exactly? I was at the gym and things were happening in my third house. It was like both of the benefics were in my third house, and I was at the gym and someone asked me on a date. I have never been approached at a gym and been asked on a date by someone. That's like a stereotypical thing that happens. I never had it happen to me, but the moon was void of course, and I was already taken. So he made the mistake of asking someone on a date during a void of course moon, and nothing came of it. Now, for me, that worked out perfectly. So, yeah, it really depends on the context. So, yeah. And too, you have to understand, like, as far as what are we seeding into a moment? Was it already started before? Did we already initiate it somehow prior? And now this is just a follow-up of it. So if you're having an appointment, like if you made that appointment an earlier date, like there's some wiggle room there with my interpretation of how it may come out if the initiation was before the void of course moon, if that makes sense. But these are the nuances that are good to think about. So yeah, if it's like an appointment where you don't want anything to come of it, like it could be cool. It could be an inconclusive test result where you got to go in and do it again. I would think that could be another possibility. So hopefully that's not it, because that would be annoying, but it could also just be like a negative result, which could be good. And I immediately, anytime anyone says appointment, I think about medical stuff. It might be about your car, a car diagnosis that comes to nothing, or maybe oh God, I brought my car in. I wonder if I did that during the void of course moon too. It was that classical thing where you bring your car in and then it doesn't make the sound and the mechanic's like, nothing's wrong with it. And it's like, I know there's something wrong with it. So that feels like that as well. All right, Momo, we got some things in common. I'll try not to poke you with my Mars. I always worry about poking people with my Mars. I hope Mars can help you with that too, Holly. I hope so. I'm hopeful that whatever we're trying to Mars around, we'll be better at it after October 12th. We got a Scorpio rising here that is reevaluating what they want to put their energy into right now. Yeah. I mean, what a great thing to do with Mars and Libra too. Because think about Mars, our action and our effort, and then it's in Libra. And Libra is that kind of intellectual, analytical, especially to do with like what do we value? Like if I value X, Y, Z, why am I putting my effort into A, B, C? That doesn't make any sense. Like for me, like I really value my peace very, very intently. So I have to look at my actions. Is me getting into online keyboard warring really embodying my value of peace? No. So that's a perfect thing to do, especially in your 12th, where we can get so many kind of blind spots about maybe where our energy is leaking or going and we're not attending, or all of those things. And when we think about energy too, I mean, emotional labor, don't forget about emotional labor, cognitive labor. There's so many hidden ways that our efforts are lost or wasted. I just hate waste like that. So yeah, good time to think about those things. All right, let's keep her moving. So let's see here. On the 17th, what's going on here? So we get our new moon, we get our eclipse. We get to experience Mars and Scorpio now, who has some help from the benefic planets who will help stabilize, support Mars. On the 17th, is there anything interesting? Sure there is. Not anything I'm seeing. Now we get, oh yeah, no, here's the interesting thing. So even by the 16th, so void of course moon, eclipse, sun with south node. So this is our last little energy suck, I think, for the season. Last little bit here on the 17th and 18th, sun is going to meet the south node by a degree and then finally start to separate. Mercury's right there as well. And this leads us into our Mercury Cazimi. Now I'll go into the Mercury Cazimi spiel. Also different definitions between the medievals and the Hellenistics. So all of that's kind of the signature, I feel like, for like October, that week of October 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th. We're going to have our last kind of lettings go, settings down temporarily, maybe having to put ourselves aside for a second might be annoying. Try not to compromise your values during this time, or go too far into that ditch of self-censorship, being too careful, too hard on yourself, that Libran awareness. That's another thing that's been happening just with all the Libra energy, whether it's Mars, Sun, especially Mercury in there as well, is just an awareness of social structure, societal expectations, all these Libra things, beyond aesthetic art composition as well, awareness there. But awareness of like, for instance, is this the correct shirt for the wedding or whatever it is? So we can get kind of hard on ourselves. I think Librans can be really just so beautifully aware and considerate, but then they can get that if they fall short of that standard they have in mind, because again, this is a place that is where Saturn exalts. So there's a lot of standards. That's why there's a whole book of etiquette rules, right? That's all Libra, but exalted Saturn. So we can also get kind of hard on ourselves, I think, about, meeting those expectations that either come from us or external to us. We think a lot about perfectionism with Virgo because they can see all the little details, right? That's an awareness that can lead to suffering. I think the awareness here that can lead to a little bit of suffering is if we guilt ourselves, we have this expectation and that these arrows of like that you didn't do the right thing or say the perfect thing, or that, what if they took it this way, or what if they took it that way? So just recognizing, yep, I don't know if that's true. I don't know that for sure. Do I know that for sure? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves, I think, especially with all of this South Node, Sun, Mars activity. Not being so hard on ourselves about all these things. And then, just taking it easy, physically speaking, this is not the time to overexert yourself. I would say that too. So, Mars being here, I didn't mention this before, but like right now, same kind of thing, like October 1st, September 28th, October 1st, 2nd, this whole time in Mars is with the South Node. These are not times to overexert ourselves either. This is like pushing ourselves too far and then not actually having the gas in the tank to get there. So be easy on yourselves at the beginning of the month. And then when we get to that third week, when the sun is here, also do not push yourself. Take it easy if you're feeling tired. And then we get our Mercury Cazimi. So this is the direct moving one. This actually perfects on the 20th. It starts on the 19th. The Hellenistics say the planet has to be within 1 degree of the sun, just at that same degree. You can think of that like two people standing on the same step together. They're on the same degree. If you are in the Renaissance or Persian Islamic tradition, you are using 17 arc minutes, give or take. And that is much smaller, more specific, lasts for about 12 hours, where Mercury is within there. And this is a time when we get a very clear representation of Mercury. So you can imagine that Mercury has something to say, or it's having some thinkings that it's realizing about. It's realizing some things in the mind. And we're getting a very clear look at that just temporarily. And this is the evening of the 19th leading into very early on Friday, the 20th. And these are times where I just like to pay attention to my brain. I like to pay attention to what's going on around me. And in this case with Libra, what is going on in terms of my values? Maybe I'm getting a clear reminder about, yep, that's why I care about that. Maybe something pisses you off and you're like, yep, that's why this is why we do this, or we don't do that, or this is why I have these friends and not these ones. So it can be these events that happen that just remind us like, that's why I do this way, or think about this way. So those are great. It's very validating sometimes. It can help clarify things for us if we've been confused about something. So just watching your brains, if you are super busy, just taking that extra minute in the shower, taking that extra minute hiding from your toddlers or whoever it is, so that you can have a realization and write it down. If you're like me, got to write stuff down. Otherwise it's gone. It's never coming back. So definitely write stuff down on the 19th and the 20th when we have Mercury with the sun. It's probably gonna be about values, ethics, what's fair, what is relationably sustainable in a relationship. This could be about, if you are someone who's working on music, art, writing, any kind of creative project, this could be a really cool day to do any of those things. God, is this a good day to send a love poem? Maybe. This might be a nice day to send a love poem. I don't know. The moon is, hold on. Yeah, it's kind of nice. Am I impromptu trying to elect a good time to send a love poem? Yes, I am. I want a Sagittarius moon. I don't want a Capricorn moon. On the 19th might be an okay day to send a love poem to yourself or to someone who's a slam dunk. Don't send it to someone who won't appreciate it. But if they will, this will be a good day to do it. Just clarification around relationship structure, clarification around the kind of relationships we want to have. And with the South Node here too, it is that opportunity in that clarity, in that realization, to let go what isn't working, or to realize that if something is making its way out, whether that's an idea, whether that's a belief or a person or a situation, that it might be okay that it is going away or taking a break, or you're not hearing from them. This could be you're not hearing from them. So if you're not hearing from them, hang in there till this stuff gets away from the South Node later in October. So if our planet of communication, Mercury, is lessened, this could be less communication, less talking, just less relating. So I was talking about a love poem, that can still be the case, but overall there is just less. And with the South Node, just because we're doing less doesn't mean we're not doing any. So I love to think of the South Node as what is necessary here, what is absolutely necessary to hold on to, what is good to hold on to, what have we had here that has been so, working so well that would serve as a good foundation for me to pursue North Node things. So then another thing with all these planets in the South Node in Libra, and we're having, eclipses, this Cazimi, having these moments. So I guess that would probably be on the 13th, 14th, 19th, 20th. Just understanding the things that are working, what you need to hold on to, and amongst the things that aren't working. So yes, we're not going to relate this way, or we're not going to have these conversations, or we're not going to be friends with these people. But, it's not that I'm not doing anything in here. These are the really most important foundational things that need to stay and that are working and that are helpful inherently. So it's kind of the rub there. I like that day. I don't know. There's something about it. Okay, then and I should say too, this is the halfway point. So on September 6th, that's when we had the rebirth, when Mercury was retrograde in Virgo. So just like 3 weeks ago, Mercury restarted its cycle in Virgo. So that was a new start with how you were doing Virgo things there in that Virgo place of your chart. This is the halfway point. So now since then, where have we kind of gotten mercurially? How are these things going halfway through? And it's square Pluto. That was the other thing. So this is just like that awareness, that noticing of, and this is very similar to what I said about the T-square with the moon here when Mars was, this was more at the beginning of the month. We had that on the 7th, that mind your own business day. So now Mercury and Sun are here at that same place. So noticing anything that we feel like is unwieldy, that we don't have control over, that controls us to some extent. And how do we now, what clarity are we having about those things? What clarity are we having about Capricorn in our chart, about the things up there, over there, down there, that we're still kind of untangling our patterns around? And it might not be the time to try to like fix them. So like if you're, don't be hard on yourself if you're seeing some challenges or feeling the pressure of some challenges and like they're not changing or going away. This square is not, it's a time to notice that they're there, but it's kind of hard sometimes to navigate it during those times. But yeah, that the Capricorn topics may also really come into play here with the realizations. Yeah, and then overall we have at the same time, when the Cazimi, for facts at least, on the 20th, 21st, 22nd, then we've got the moon interacting with this nice earth trine. So it's like we have a moment to have some realizations about things during that Cazimi. And this is after, feeling some wavering vitality and motivation. So I feel like we're a little rocky at this point, but then the moon gets into the earth places. And I think we'll see also the opportunity, the abundance, the help, the support, the assistance that we could have with whatever challenges we might have seen or realized. So that I was happy to see that. It was like some rocky stuff, but then whenever the moon gets into an earth sign, it's like we get reminded of the help and the support that we have. On the 21st, so kind of bleeding along, of course, these planets, it'll be for a few days. So 19th, 20th, the Cazimi, then for pretty much 2 more days. Yeah, pretty much 2 more days. So like the 20th, 21st, we're still going to be just feeling Pluto. Moon is going to be there too. Yeah. So whatever's happening at the end of cardinal signs for us. So look to Libra and Capricorn. What is going on in those areas of your life? What is needing change and pivoting? Because this is a square. So something needs a change. There's tension somewhere. And anytime there's tension, there's some adjustment that is asking to be made, whether the adjustment is our acceptance of it. Sometimes very silly, it's kind of silly, it sounds silly, but if like we're confused or frustrated, sometimes the move is to just sit there and be with it and just be like, yep, I am confused and frustrated. There is confusion and frustration here. Sometimes that is the move, to just accept that's the adjustment that needs to be made in that moment for my sanity. But the square can speak to larger changes that need to happen. It's the nature of Mars. Before we had Pluto being the transforming one, that was always Mars. So this is a nature of transformation. What is changing between your Libra and Capricorn areas? Yeah, it might be some changes that it almost feels like it requires like our own sovereign internal leadership with ourselves to try to get through that. And I think maybe a message too, because I think about like what is at the end of these cardinal signs. And when I think about the decans and like the the meaning of like these tarot cards. So the Four of Swords, or what is that? The Four of Pentacles. It's like we're trying to hold something that has begun. It's like with the Four of Swords, we're contemplating, we're thinking, we're trying to keep the peace and have some kind of mental stability after what was some mental turmoil of the Three of Swords. And I think we can kind of think ourselves into knots in there. Austin Coppock talks about, we go from like 2 scales to like a bunch of gyroscopes. I love that. Was like my favorite way that he described this during his Norwalk workshop. So this idea in the third part of Libra, that we don't have control over everything. We can't make everybody happy. We can't have every little thing fall into place exactly how we want it. And then the last bit of Capricorn, it's that trying to kind of find some stability in an earthen way, in a material way. So, and with Pluto here, especially adding that clinging. What are we clinging to materially? What are we clinging to in terms of a system, potentially, or a way of doing things here as well? Beyond just resources, like just a structure or way of doing things that we can get really stuck in Capricorn. There's just a lot of change that's needed here, and I don't think change isn't easy, but this doesn't look like an easy change. So if you're feeling kind of that tension on the 21st, 20th, 21st, I think we may have to be honest with ourselves and in that way. Okay. Mercury trine Saturn on the 22nd. Yeah, that helps too. Like all these planets in trine with Saturn, the sun is about to meet him too. And this feels like a reality check because Saturn's been moving backwards since, I don't know, at least a couple months. They've been moving backwards and helping us kind of, I think, at the same time, deconstruct what's going on in the Pisces area of our chart. Asking us to create some different structures here, asking us to do things a little differently in Pisces. And all these planets getting into Scorpio are having this harmonious relationship, kind of seeing it in a more sympathetic way. Like, okay, here's what we're working with. It's like walking into an old house and being like, all right, here are the bones. Here's the structure. I feel like Saturn's kind of, I guess, gutted it. And now we're seeing what's there. And all these planets in Scorpio are just like, all right, let's draw up some plans. Like, how are we going to, use whatever this is that we have here? But it's that reality that Saturn brings of like, yeah, these are the limitations, or this is what really needs to be done here before this other thing can be done. But Scorpio is perfectly suited to figure all of those things out. So personally, I am excited for this time of year when we get all of these Scorpio planets, and they're going to be led by a very powerful Mars. Of course, we got Mercury and Mars together again. So as we approach the end of the month, let's all make sure we're not having sharper words than we intend. Because even if we don't mean to, sometimes it can come off a little gruff there. But otherwise, this is just really hella effective. This just feels very, very, like, not fast. Scorpio's not fast. None of this is fast. But whatever it is doing, I feel like it's doing a good job. Okay, let's see here. Now, interestingly, if I tilt my head and think about someone, like let's say you're a Taurus rising, and let's say you're embroiled in a battle with someone in the 7th. Now I was just like, ooh, Mars, they're doing things so effectively. Well, in the place of your open adversaries, I wouldn't necessarily love that for you, dear Taurus rising. So not to make anyone worried, but we always have to take everything in context, right? So what is Mars doing effectively? That is going to be determined by what house it's in. So in the 12th, it could be that you are rummaging through your skeletons in the closet very effectively. Is that going to be fun? Probably not. For me, it's in my career stuff. So yeah, I should giddy up and go and do stuff. If it is in your 7th, again, like if it's you and a beloved partner and everything's going great, maybe it's a time where they or you both are just like building all of the IKEA furniture and just kicking ass and taking names together. If it is an open opponent in your Taurus rising, then they are being very effective at being an open opponent. And I don't love that for you. So again, very context dependent, but overall we've got an effective Mars. So let's focus on doing Mars stuff in our lives, especially in the Scorpio parts. Additionally, Mars rules Aries. So Mars will also be extra effective at carrying out things for your Aries place as well. So if you're that Taurus person, I mean, yeah, maybe that'll help you with your 12th house skeletons in your closet too a little bit. If you are I don't know, maybe you're a Cancer rising, this would be in your 5th and your 10th. So maybe what you're kind of generating or creating of your own will, of your own self-expression, and maybe that's helping you in your career. Maybe you're kicking ass and taking names in the dating scene, and that's helping you in your life path or to have your legacy of whatever you want. So yeah, lots of neat possibilities. I will stop talking about Mars and Scorpio. Oh, have we also entered our second void of course moon? No, not yet. Then on the 24th, so we get Sun entering here. I guess let me just say a few other things about that. Sun in Scorpio. So again, we have gone from a position where the Sun was not in great strength. They were not provided with resources. They probably didn't feel super vital. The Sun is who helps us, exert our will on the world around us. We may have just felt kind of uninspired, at least somewhat. But now we are out of that situation in Libra, and we get, again, both benefics, seeing and able to support. So I like that. We are in a harmonious relationship with Saturn. So Saturn isn't doing too much harm or anything like that. So yeah, I'm really not minding Sun in Scorpio. This first 10 degrees, and this is going to come in when we talk about the eclipse. This is the 5 of Cups. It is a place of desire and wanting to connect. We think about connecting with water, with Mars ruled water like this, fixed Mars ruled water. We get kind of this, we lock onto something and you can focus and get kind of this singular, Mars is singular, deep connected focus. That's, I think, where we get this idea of like intensity, is that singular focus that can get so intense, right? So we get this ability to connect deeply, to feel deeply. And in this first 10 degrees, it's like, yes, I want that. I want to pursue that. That is where my focus is drawing me toward. Hopefully then in the middle to get whatever we have been desiring. But there is a yearning and there is a hunger here, so to speak. Sun is feeling that. So if we are feeling really motivated to pursue something, that could be cool. And I hope that is what it will be for us. I don't think I need to say anything about that. So then on the 25th, we are going to get our Hellenistic void of course moon number 2. So this one starts at 4:51 a.m. Central Standard Time, 15 degrees, 18 arc minutes Pisces. The moon is going to oppose Venus. And then that's the last aspect until the 28th at 7:39 in the morning Central Standard Time. And that is at 0 degrees, 33 minutes of Taurus, where it will then sextile Saturn. So the moon is going to go all the way through Aries, all in a void. So especially don't be initiating things in your Aries place between the 25th and the 28th. Unless you don't want anything to come of it, then go ahead. Then the eclipse happens right afterwards. So we get this second void of course into eclipse. It's like not a lot of stuff happening and then potentially a lot of stuff happening. So Let's go to the thing. So yes, we're going to see the moon. This is on the 25th, really early in the day. Moon will just be chilling here, interacting with Jupiter, interacting with Venus. This feels okay for the most part. You know, we're getting these Scorpio planets all kind of sending this trine down to Moon. I feel like poor Moon's going to be down here, and they're going to be with Saturn and Neptune, kind of feeling like Eeyore, like, yeah, there's all this stuff I got to do. Look at all this reality. And then they're going to be getting this trine from the Scorpio planets being like, yes, buck up, become emboldened, do your things gradually. And Moon's going to be with Neptune and probably not really feel like it. This is good planning, contemplating energy. So on the 25th, it's like we got the Moon with Neptune most of the day. It just feels a little like a wet noodle. A little like a wet noodle. And then we go into our void of course time in Aries. I'm kind of curious about this because the Moon is going to be in Aries. It won't be able to see any of these people, at least not by traditional aspect. The Moon is going to be, let's pretend Pluto doesn't exist, with the exception of Pluto. Pluto's the only one that can kind of witness and interact with Moon here, that Moon can interact with. That's it. And Chiron. So Moon is going to be experiencing Aries really all of its own accord without this direct influence from other planets. So I'm kind of curious about what that is going to be like. It's like being like I had said, the void of course Moon feels like yelling in an empty room. It's kind of cool to be in an empty room. You know, like no one's in there looking at you, watching you. So you can just kind of like look around at the room and explore and like see what it's like without being bothered by anyone. Like, I don't know, that's kind of what it feels like it could be good for, to just explore the Aries part of your life, whatever house topics that is in for you, for a couple days during that void of course Moon. And then we get our second eclipse. And that is a whole different animal than the last one. The Moon late Central Standard Time on the 28th is going to be getting this started, and then it's going to roll into the 30th. Whoop, too far. So yeah. Oh, second half of the day, I should say, not too late. Yeah, it's actually kind of in the middle of the day, later in the day in Europe and Asia into Sunday. So this one's interesting because the Moon and the Sun are in Scorpio Taurus, but then the nodes themselves are in Aries Libra. So we actually are going to have to consider two sets of house topics for this one. Last one was really simple. It was all in Libra. Sun, Moon, South Node, all in Libra. Venus was in Virgo. So it was very much just about that part of the chart. Here, it's a ton of topics coming in. So depending on what's going on in your life, I'm not gonna try, but it might include whatever narratives are happening. A lot of things might be tied into that story. So this one's more of a culmination. It's a full moon. So what are the fruitings? What is fruiting? What is peaking? What is coming out of what we realized 2 weeks ago? Or if we got some new information or clarity or realizations in our solar eclipse 2 weeks ago, now what is coming from that? What is the result of that we can see a little bit with a little bit more clarity? So here, I think we're getting a view of some kind of abundance. Jupiter is here. Jupiter is present. They're giving some encouragement, some enthusiasm, or showing, hey, this is stable. Now, it is inconsistent and unreliable right now, though, until January. Jupiter stations direct on like January 1st. So this year is really going to feel like, I think, kind of a new year versus last year. It didn't, because everything was retrograde. This January 1st, lots of stuff stationing. So, but in the meantime, October, November, December, Jupiter is retrograde. Whatever stability or abundance it has, we may not be able to count on it. That being said, we do see it. There is some there. That's great. Venus can see all of this by a harmonious aspect. So they're able to chime in. Mars is in their power, ruling over the sun. Moon is exalted. There's a lot of planets, Venus doesn't have dignity, but there's a lot of other planets who have, well, I shouldn't say she doesn't have any dignity, but you know what I mean. She's in her fall, and these other planets are much more able to help us feel resourced during this, what is otherwise kind of an unstable time. Moving towards something. So of course we need to also remember Aries and what is growing there, what is building there. How can we bring together, the abundance that's happening in Taurus and also serve it toward kind of what's growing in Aries. I think that's mostly what I have for this one. The moon is going to move through Jupiter. And then by the time it gets, further out and away from the sun, the things that it's going to run into Venus. So it doesn't have quite the bumpy aftertaste that the last one had. I don't know. This one, it feels like there's a little bit more hope involved, even if, we're realizing things that might be difficult. I think that's all I had to say. So then, looking at this one too. So with the decans, we got the 5 of Cups. That's where the sun is. So there's a lot of yearning happening here. A lot of strategizing and planning and thinking about what we are yearning toward. And the moon, it's with Jupiter. It's exalted. There is abundance, but it's in this place that's also the 5 of Pentacles, which is the opposite of that. So that's kind of interesting. It's like we do have it, but I almost wonder if there's something here where we're not going to quite feel like we have the abundance that we do, or if there's still going to be a sense that like something is missing. We're yearning for something, and 5 of Pentacles, there it is, inadequate, or we're under-resourced in some way, but Jupiter is here and it is an exalted moon. So there is some resource. It's just, I don't know. It might not feel that apparent, or we may just feel like, okay, I have that, but I don't have this, and that's what I want next. And so I'm going to go for that. Of course, craving for becoming all over, make sure you're not just doggedly going for achievement for why, to take with you when you die. So we always have to ask those questions when we're growing and increasing and chasing and yearning. But it could be put to good use. So I don't know, there's something there about this feeling of yearning and this sense of abundance or not. Exercise verbal caution. I did put that in here just because Mercury and Mars, they're right on top of each other. So this is precise language. This is cutting language. This is really, man, if you did have an argument to have, if you needed to do a debate, if this were on my side, that would be pretty effective. If you're talking to your mother-in-law, exercise caution. But you sunk my battleship. Very great for strategy and doing things. Good for exploring your own motivations too, honestly. Eclipse continues. Moon, Uranus, Jupiter that Uranus is there too. They just add disruptions, interruptions, but also breakthroughs and insights. So already eclipses are all like that. There's insights, there's disruption. So Uranus just kind of adds to that being involved. And that pretty much ends the month for us. That's pretty much it. The moon's going to square Saturn after that. Let's see. So we get that vibe again of just it just hasn't been feeling super enlivening. So that's pretty much how we end the month. This is eclipse. But then remember, we really, to see the whole picture of the eclipse and that story, we really should wait till November 12th. And that's when we get our new moon, also Mars ruled in Scorpio. That should be a nice, clear, concise little nugget of illumination to tell us what's going on in the Scorpio part of our chart, especially after the events of October. So this really does leave us on a bit of a cliffhanger. We are having a lot of excitement, and oh, it's Halloween as well. We should talk about the Halloween forecast. I bet we'll all be partying because Halloween proper is on, if you celebrate, that is on a Tuesday. That's on a Tuesday, so probably going to be partying on the 28th, which is the night of the eclipse. So, you know, if there's drama, just don't. If people are being crazy, let them. You don't have to be. Be careful. You know, I would tell you all that's good advice for every Halloween, but it can get a little wild Halloween. I don't know. At least here in Madison, Wisconsin, people really seem to be obsessed with it. Not like they used to be, but still. So yeah, just be careful out there. I think, you know, that whole verbal thingy, Scorpio in general they're going to end fights. They're not going to start them. They're not usually going to start an altercation, but they'll figure out a way to put it to rest. So I'm not like thinking that just because we've got a lot of martially influenced planets that people are going to be spicy, but this could be very much reading something that's not even there, thinking someone meant to offend you and they didn't. Sometimes our threat assessment can be a little too much in Scorpio. So again, just like do the Taurus antidote. What is really there? What am I actually seeing, smelling, tasting, experiencing in front of me with my senses versus the Scorpio? What are we trying to see in between and underneath and all around that's not being said? Do the Taurus antidote if things are getting weird. If anything gets weird, just do the Taurus thing. What is here right now with my senses? Because yeah, I don't love seeing a Halloween party night on an eclipse. That's not my favorite. Don't overdo it. You know, this could also just be going ham, partying too hard, like taking it to the limit. And then the moon hits Uranus. Yep. I think that's the month. I think that's what I have to say. Let's turn it over to the chat and see if anything, or if there's anything you wanted me to cover that I didn't. I, of course, didn't get to all the transits, but if you had any that you were hoping I talked about that I didn't, let me know. Let's see what people are saying. Hello, Sarah Weber. You are welcome. Ooh, another Libra rising. Yeah, y'all are going to have very interesting October. I hope it's really enlightening. I'm always just like so curious. It's like curiosity is the name of the game. Just go into everything with curiosity. Hello, Creating Harmony. Welcome back. Yeah, I know, Fallen. This was a little early. This is when I had time to do it because life's been a little touch and go lately. Awesome. Lee, I wonder why your veil is thinner. You know, sometimes Neptune transits, that's thing one, that can make a veil thinner. 12th house, 8th housey transits, or perfection years, you know, if by perfection, those years are highlighted. All of those things. Yeah, the whole thing about like the veil being thinner during eclipses, do people say that? I forget when like the veil comments. There's transits that people associate to that. I guess I'm curious about what other astrologers might say are veil thinning weather patterns. Yeah, that's what we'll call them. Yeah, I guess, maybe it's like more seasonal holidays, that too. Yeah, we're going into the darkness. So of course, yeah, happy equinox, everybody. I forgot to say, we are just over that hump of equal night, equal daytime light. So we're reaching this balance point again. It's the extremes, you know, in winter and summer of most light, least light. Now spring, fall, we have that balance. And I think that we can see that because we lean so heavily into summer and winter because we have no other choice. Like we have to lean into what is there. And so it's always interesting to me how, you know, spring and summer, we equal day, equal night. And this is also the time I think we kind of rubber band back to a center ourselves. And we, do our cleaning and all of our types of harvesting and preparing things and putting things together, and coming back to give attention to things that we maybe hadn't given much attention because we have been at those extremes for the last several months. I love this time of year. It's my favorite, definitely favorite time of year. I think that's all I have. Announcements. I am still doing readings. So I'm only booked out a few weeks. If you need to see me sooner, you can always email me. I don't have like an official waiting list, but like if it's really urgent, then if someone cancels, I'll just like shoot you an email. You can use the discount code Astrology Podcast for 10% off. I am on the little referral list, friend of the show. So if you want 10% off for any of my readings, except for the research one, that one is already really cheap. And if you want to help me with my research, that is an offering I have as well. I have finally reached 50 people, or if I'm not 50, I'm damn close. So I'm just about gonna take it off of my offering list. I think I've got enough people. I'm still going to keep using it like in my own tool bag, but I think I'm almost done with research participants. But if you still want to slide in there, you can book that on my website. Link is below. Reading group. We are starting chapter 2 on the 7th, actually the 8th. The 8th of October, if you are in Chris Brennan's Hellenistic Astrology course, me and Melissa, Chris's assistant, are doing a book club for Chris's book, Hellenistic Astrology, the Study of Fate and Fortune. And you can come in at any time. Like, of course, it's nice when, you go front to or back to front front to back with the book. But if you want to join us at like chapter 8, that's fine. We'd love to have you. It's very casual, just discussing things. So we take it in better. So research, that thing, book club, clients, Q&A. Next Q&A is coming up on the 12th at 7 p.m. Central Time. Here, same place. I think that's it. Yeah. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. If you have anything you'd like to share, put it in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you next month. When is next? The next one of these, nope, I didn't pick it yet. So stay tuned for the November forecast. So yeah, get through these eclipses, get through the void of course moons, 11th through the 15th, 25th through the 28th. Don't do stuff unless you don't want anything to come of it. Just like watch stuff and don't get involved with drama. If you can, at least till the second week of November, and then you'll know what kind of drama you're getting into. I think that's the final thing in the end of the month. Very receptive, very responsive, very earth, very water, very responding to everything that has happened. So I love you all so much. Have a great month. I hope you had a great September. I hope you have an excellent October. We're gonna be in a whole new little, all the board pieces on the game board are going to be changed the next time we talk. So I'm very excited to hear from all of you. And again, don't forget to email me with questions or concerns. www.aligninglightastrology.com is my website. My email is aligninglighastro